They always said family sticks together. That no matter how rough life gets, your blood will be there to back you up. I used to believe that, blindly, stupidly, like a dog chasing the same stick no matter how many times it got smacked in the face with it. My name's Connor. I'm 27, and I've been the quiet one in my family for as long as I can remember. Not the golden child, not the black sheep either, just background noise. Polite, responsible, the one who shows up on time and remembers everyone's birthdays but somehow still ends up holding the camera instead of being in the picture. And maybe that's fine when you're 10. Maybe that's okay when you're just trying to survive high school. But at 27, when your own parents don't save you a seat at their 30th anniversary dinner, that's when you start asking yourself what the hell you've been showing up for all these years. Let me backtrack a little. I'm the middle child, older brother Zach, younger sister Mia. Growing up, it always felt like the family spotlight couldn't stretch wide enough to cover all three of us, so I learned to live in the shadows. Zach was the academic prodigy, the one who could do no wrong, while Mia was the charming little tornado who somehow spun her way out of every consequence. I wasn't bitter about it, not really. I figured everyone had a role to play, and mine was to be steady, dependable, the guy who could be counted on to clean up after the chaos. But lately, I'd started to realize how convenient that had become for everyone else, how invisible I'd made myself just to keep the peace. My parents, Mark and Linda, are that kind of couple that makes it all look easy from the outside. High school sweethearts, married young, built a life together. But if you scratch beneath the surface, you start to see the cracks. How mom can't go 2 hours without criticizing someone. How dad checks out of any conversation that doesn't revolve around him. How they both have this weird way of weaponizing politeness. Growing up, I learned that disappointing them didn't look like yelling or slamming doors. It looked like silence. Long, drawn-out silences that told you weren't worth the breath. And when your whole family communicates in passive-aggressive digs and tight-lipped smiles, you start to internalize the idea that being quiet is the safest option. Still, I tried. I really did. I graduated with honors, landed a solid job in finance, got my own apartment, stayed out of trouble. Every holiday, I made sure to be there, even when I had to skip vacations or delay plans with friends. Every birthday, every Mother's Day, every Father's Day, I never missed a call, never showed up without a gift. I wasn't flashy about it. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to be seen. So when my parents announced they were throwing a big dinner to celebrate their 30th anniversary, I thought, maybe this is my chance to feel like part of the family for once. Not just the polite observer. Not just the one who shows up and fades into the background. I decided I'd surprise them with something special. $2,000 in cash, tucked neatly into a gold-trimmed envelope. It wasn't just a gift, it was a gesture. A way of saying, I see everything you've done, and I appreciate you, even if you never say it back. I even had a short note written inside. Thanks for keeping this family together, even when it wasn't easy. I showed up to the restaurant early that evening. Suit and tie, polished shoes, fresh haircut, the whole deal. I wanted to make an impression. The place was upscale, the kind where the lighting is soft and the cutlery actually matters. I was nervous, but in a good way. Excited, even. I'd called ahead to confirm the reservation, made sure my name was on the list. But when I walked in and told the hostess who I was, she gave me a confused smile. Oh, you're Connor? They're already seated. Table for 11. I blinked. 11? She nodded. Yep, they just sat down a few minutes ago. I followed her through the dining area, weaving between tables, my stomach slowly tightening with each step. And then I saw them, my whole family, gathered around a long rectangular table. My parents at the center, Zach and his fiancée to their right, Mia to their left. Aunts, uncles, even a couple of family friends. Everyone was there. Except one chair was missing. No, scratch that. One chair was very much occupied by some guy I'd never seen before in my life. He was sitting next to Mia, hand resting casually on the back of her chair, laughing at something she'd just said. Mid-20s, some kind of artsy-looking guy with rings on every finger and a shirt way too loud for a place like this. The moment I stopped at the edge of the table, everyone turned. My mom gave me that same half-smile she always did when I showed up a second too late. My dad raised his glass in a lazy gesture. And Mia? She actually had the audacity to wave. Oh, Connor, Mom said, like I was an unexpected waiter with the bread basket. We didn't think you'd come so dressed up. I looked at the table again. looked at the guy in my seat, looked at the 11 full chairs. Where should I sit? I asked quietly. Mom blinked like the question had never occurred to her. Well, we didn't really plan for plus ones, honey. I didn't bring one, I said. It's just me. She glanced at the guy next to Mia, then back at me. Right. Well, just stand for now, okay? We'll see if the waiter can bring another chair later. And then it happened. The laugh. That soft ripple of amusement around the table. Mia chuckling behind her hand. One of my uncles muttering, poor guy, under his breath. Even my dad, not a full laugh, but the kind of smirk that said he found it amusing, too. And I just stood there, heat creeping up my neck, that envelope heavy in my jacket pocket. The envelope that suddenly felt ridiculous. That felt like a fool's prize. I forced a smile, because that's what you do when you're the quiet one. When you've trained yourself to never make a scene. But something cracked in that moment, something sharp and final. Actually, I said, reaching into my jacket. I think I'll keep this for someone who saves me a seat. I tucked the envelope back into my inner pocket and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard my mom call out my name. Heard the scraping of chairs as people tried to stand. Heard someone saying, wait, you don't have to go. But I was already flagging down the waiter. Hey, I said as he approached. Can you cancel my part of the bill? I won't be needing it. And that's when the scramble really started. And that's where it gets interesting. I didn't expect the silence to follow me out the door. I figured there'd be laughter behind my back, or maybe whispered apologies no one intended to deliver. But no, it was quiet. Like the air had gone stale the moment I left. I walked down the block, loosened my tie, and found a bench in front of a closed boutique with one of those vintage clocks in the window. 6:44 p.m. I just sat there for a while, watching the second-hand tick, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way most people get angry. There was no explosion, no boiling rage. It was more like erosion, like something inside me had been quietly wearing down for years, and tonight it finally collapsed. That envelope in my jacket pocket felt heavier by the minute. I pulled it out and stared at the handwriting, my own, carefully scrawled across the front. For Mom and Dad, 30 years strong. I'd practiced that line 3 times before writing it. Now it felt hollow, cheap. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't tear it either. I just stared at it until my phone buzzed. Mia, Connor, come back. Don't be dramatic. We'll figure something out. 3 minutes later. Zach, come on, man. Don't make this about you. And then, finally, Mom, please don't ruin this night for us. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a request to stop being inconvenient. And maybe that's what stung the most. How effortlessly they turned their oversight into my drama. I didn't reply. A couple days passed after the dinner. No one called. No one came by. I figured maybe they'd need some time to cool down or reset, but the silence just stretched longer. The only person who reached out was my Aunt Julie, Dad's younger sister. She wasn't at the dinner. She lives 2 states over, but she saw the pictures Mia posted and noticed I wasn't in any of them. You okay, sweetheart? Her text said. You're usually front row with your folks. I hesitated, then told her the truth in the most measured tone I could manage. She replied with a single sentence that hit harder than I expected. You've always been the one they take for granted. It stuck with me. From there, things began to shift. Not externally. No one in my family suddenly changed their behavior. But internally, I started rewinding through all the little moments I'd brushed off over the years. Like the time I got promoted and no one in the family group chat replied. Or the Christmas I flew home from across the country only to find out Zach had been given the guest room because he needed space to study, so I had to sleep on the couch. Or how Mia had borrowed my car during college without asking and racked up a speeding ticket I had to pay because she was just having a rough week. I let it all slide. I told myself they didn't mean harm, that it wasn't worth making a scene. But when you stack it all together, you realize you weren't just overlooked. You were invisible. A week after the dinner, Mia showed up at my apartment. I heard the buzzer ring and didn't move. She rang it again. Then again. I finally answered through the intercom. What do you want? Wow. Rude, she said. I brought your Tupperware from last month. Thought you'd want it back. I paused, then buzzed her in. Part of me wanted to see her face, to see if it looked even remotely guilty. When I opened the door, she was holding a single plastic container in one hand and a Frappuccino in the other. She walked past me like she owned the place. Smells like you've been living off takeout, she said, wrinkling her nose. Been busy. I replied, shutting the door. She put the container on the kitchen counter and leaned against it. So, are you done being dramatic? I stared at her. You think I'm the dramatic one? Oh, come on, Connor. It was just a seating issue. You made such a big scene over nothing. Nothing, I said, my voice low. You gave my seat to a guy I've never met, and Mom told me to stand. Okay, but it's not like we thought you'd actually show up alone. I told them you were probably bringing that girl you were seeing. We broke up 2 months ago. I told Mom that. She waved a hand. Well, nobody keeps up with your dating life. It's confusing. It's not confusing. It's just not worth gossiping about. So you all forget I exist. That made her pause. I let the silence hang. I wanted her to sit in it. For once. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Look, Mom feels bad. Sort of. But you ditching the dinner and acting all mysterious with that envelope thing? That was petty. I raised my eyebrows. Petty? Yeah. You made them look bad in front of everyone. Uncle Tom said you've always been a bit sensitive. I felt something cold settle into my chest. Right, I said. And did anyone ask why I brought the envelope? She shrugged. I figured it was some dramatic note or something. It was $2,000. She blinked. What? I was going to give them $2,000. As a thank you for everything. For raising us. For putting up with all the crap they've dealt with. I wanted to show them I noticed. That I cared. Mia went quiet. I had it all planned, I continued. I was going to hand it to them during dessert. Make a toast. Something nice. Something that made me feel like I mattered. She looked down at her drink. So, you're really not going to give it to them now? I laughed. You think they earned it? I mean, she hesitated. They're still our parents. Yeah, I said. They are. She left a few minutes later. Didn't say goodbye. Just kind of shuffled out, like she was embarrassed or annoyed. Maybe both. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about letting the door close behind her. But that wasn't the breaking point. That came a few days later. It was a Saturday morning. I'd just gotten back from the gym and was in the middle of making coffee when my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. At @Mia_living_large tagged you in a post. I clicked it out of habit. And froze. The post was a photo of Mia and her new boyfriend. Same guy from the dinner. They were standing in front of a shiny, brand new white SUV with a massive red bow on the hood. The caption read, "When your family knows how to treat you like a queen. Thanks Mom and Dad for the early wedding gift. Love you, #blessed, #spoiled, #family first." I stared at it. Reread it. Tried to rationalize it. An early wedding gift? From our parents? A brand new SUV? I scrolled through the comments. Friends congratulating her. Emojis. Someone joking about whether her boyfriend got one too. And then I saw it. Mom's comment, posted just 10 minutes ago. Only the best for our girl. You've always made us proud. That was it. That was the moment. That was the damn breaking point. All the years of being the quiet one. The one who never made waves. The one who never asked for anything. And here she was, 6 months into a relationship with a guy no one knew. And she was getting a car. From the same parents who couldn't be bothered to reserve me a chair. I didn't even feel angry at first. It was something deeper. Something colder. Like a severing of nerves. I realized, then and there, that I wasn't a part of this family in the way I thought I was. I was a placeholder. A convenience. A background prop in someone else's celebration. I closed the app. Stared at the wall for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, clicked into my financial records, and started making some changes. Some small. Some massive. See, what my family doesn't know, what they've never bothered to ask, is that I've done well for myself. Quietly, without fanfare. That promotion 2 years ago, it wasn't to assistant manager, like they assumed. It was to partner. And the side investments I never talked about? Let's just say I don't lose sleep over car payments. They don't know I own 2 properties under an LLC. That I've got a 6-figure emergency fund. That I've been contributing to a family trust one started just in case one day I had kids of my own to care about. They don't know any of this because they never cared enough to ask. But I was done staying quiet. Done playing the role of the polite ghost. And if they thought giving away my chair was a mistake, they were about to find out what happens when the invisible sun finally decides to stand. After that Instagram post, something in me hardened. I wish I could say I marched straight into battle, head held high, ready to confront every injustice and reclaim my worth. But that's not how real life works. That's not how I work. See, when you've spent years training yourself to blend in, to keep the peace, to carry the weight without ever asking for help, The breaking point doesn't turn you into a warrior overnight. First, it breaks you. The day after Mia posted that picture, I called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. I didn't even lie. I told my manager I needed a day. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he could hear it in my voice. I spent the whole day in sweatpants, blinds drawn, phone off, nursing a headache I couldn't shake. It wasn't just about the SUV. It was about everything it represented. How far removed I really was from the family I kept trying to impress. They didn't know me. Not really. And maybe they never had. That realization felt like grief. Like mourning someone who was still alive. I didn't eat much that week. I showed up to work on autopilot. Meetings blurred together. I missed a deadline for the first time since I was hired. Nobody scolded me, but I could feel the shift. The raised eyebrows. The polite, concerned texts. I brushed them off. Then came the final blow, the one that stripped away the last thread of illusion. It was a Saturday morning again. I just started to feel okay, like I was slowly crawling back to normal. I even made plans to grab lunch with my friend Tyler, someone who'd known me since college and had always called me out on my family's nonsense, even when I tried to defend it. But then my phone buzzed. Dad, hey, quick question. Your mom's worried. Did you maybe accidentally cancel the direct deposit for the family vacation fund? The account's frozen. I stared at the message. Family vacation fund. That's when I remembered. I'd set it up 3 years ago. After that awkward trip to Colorado where Mom ended up putting most of the expenses on her credit card and spent the entire week guilt-tripping us about it. I offered to help. Suggested setting up a fund we could all contribute to, something we could dip into when we wanted to do something as a family. I volunteered to manage it. At first, everyone pitched in. $50 here, $100 there. But over time, Zach and Mia stopped contributing, and I quietly took over. Automatically. Every month, I'd toss in $300, sometimes more. No one ever asked. No one ever thanked me. Now, 3 years later, the balance had grown to nearly $12,000. And I just pulled it all out. Not to be spiteful, not even out of revenge. Just because I didn't want to fund a family that didn't see me. I replied simply, no accident. I closed it. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then finally, Dad, don't you think that's a little extreme? I didn't reply. 2 hours later, I got a message from Zach. Zach, what's this I hear about you pulling the plug on the vacation fund? You know we were planning a trip to Aruba this year. I wanted to laugh. We were planning? Last I checked, I was funding. No apology. No curiosity. Just entitlement. I deleted the thread without responding. But the weight of it all caught up to me that night. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't think straight. My apartment felt smaller. My life felt smaller. I'd spent years trying to prove myself to people who didn't even know me. And the second I stopped being useful, I was nothing to them. That night, I hit rock bottom. I cried. Harder than I have in years. Not just from sadness, but exhaustion. From carrying everyone else's expectations while ignoring my own needs. From believing that if I just worked hard enough, showed up enough, gave enough, they'd love me back the way I love them. But rock bottom has a funny way of giving you clarity. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't sugarcoat things. It just sits there with you, blunt and unforgiving, until you decide whether you're going to stay down or climb. That next morning, I got up early, showered, cleaned the apartment, took out the trash, changed the sheets. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a reset. A signal to myself that I wasn't going to let this define me. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. I went through my bank accounts, closed the ones tied to anything family-related. I rerouted all my mail to a digital service. I hired a CPA to separate my personal finances from my family's lingering entanglements. I canceled the automatic transfers to the niece's college funds I'd been helping with on the side. Every small tether, every financial string I'd been using to stay connected, I cut them. And when I was done, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. That week, I finally told Tyler everything. We met up for dinner at our usual Korean barbecue spot, and over a sizzling plate of bulgogi, I laid it all out. The dinner, the SUV, the trust fund, the texts, the vacation fund. He didn't interrupt. Just let me talk. When I finally paused, he shook his head. You've been carrying these people like dead weight, man. I don't know how you lasted this long. I kept thinking if I just did a little more. No, he said firmly. They've been showing you who they are for years. You just didn't want to believe it. He was right. We finished our meal, and on the walk back to my car, He said something that stuck with me. You don't owe them your silence anymore. That night, I started journaling. Not in some overly sentimental way, but just to process. I wrote down everything I'd been holding back. Every moment of invisibility. Every hurt. Every time I'd been passed over or dismissed or used. I didn't censor it. I didn't edit it. I just let it spill out. Pages turned into entries. Entries turned into structure. Structure turned into clarity. Eventually, I realized I wasn't just venting. I was rebuilding. Slowly, quietly, brick by brick. The next few months were transformative. I threw myself into work, not as a distraction, but as an affirmation. I started mentoring junior associates, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I launched a small financial literacy initiative in my community, helping young adults learn about credit, savings, and investments. It felt good to give, but this time on my own terms. I got a call from Mom during the second month. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message asking if I was okay. Said she missed me. Said things had been weird lately and hoped we could talk. But she didn't say sorry. Didn't mention the dinner. Didn't ask how I was really doing. I didn't call back. A week later, Zach emailed me a Google Doc, some spreadsheet about family gift contributions for the holidays. It had my name on a tab. $250 suggested for Mom. $200 for Dad. $150 for Mia. I closed it without reading further. Instead, I donated $5,000 to a local foster care nonprofit in honor of the kids who never get a seat at the table. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally putting my resources where they mattered. I started therapy. Twice a month at first, then weekly. It was hard, peeling back layers I didn't even know I had. But it was also liberating. I learned how to sit with discomfort, how to name the grief I felt over my family, how to accept that sometimes people love you only when it's convenient for them. And that's not your fault. One day, my therapist asked me, if they never changed, if they never apologized, could you still be whole? It took me a few seconds to answer. Yes, I said, because I finally stopped waiting for them to define my worth. And that's the truth. I stopped trying to earn a seat at a table that was never built for me. Instead, I started building my own. 3 months later, I was invited to Mia's engagement party. A formal invite, mailed in a lavender envelope with gold foil. The card was thick, the kind you pay extra for. At the bottom, in tiny cursive, it read, "Family dinner after the reception. Seating limited." There was a QR code to RSVP. I scanned it, left the page blank. But I did mail something back. A gold-trimmed envelope, similar to the one I'd carried to the anniversary dinner, addressed to Mom and Dad. Inside was a simple note. I saved a seat. You just never looked for me. No money. No guilt. Just truth. The fall wasn't fast. It wasn't flashy. But it was real. And now? Now the rise had begun. The engagement party was scheduled for the second Saturday of September. By mid-August, I still hadn't RSVP'd. Not because I was indecisive, but because I already knew I wouldn't be going. I'd stopped expecting change from my family. Stopped hoping they'd wake up one day and see me as more than just the one who always picks up the slack. The funny thing is, once I stopped waiting for them to include me, I finally saw just how easy it had been for them to exclude me. Every interaction was conditional. Every check-in was just a lead-in to a request. The SUV, the vacation fund, the spreadsheet with my name slapped on it. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure. But now I had something I'd never allowed myself to feel before, leverage. The freedom to walk away had given me the clearest mind I'd ever had. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was focused, and I had no intention of being vindictive. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I wanted to send a message, one they couldn't ignore, one that wouldn't be laughed off, brushed over, or repackaged as me being sensitive. I wanted them to feel it, not just the absence of my money or presence, but the reality of who I was, who they'd overlooked for so long. Not the quiet one, not the helper, not the backup plan, the one they underestimated. And Mia's engagement party? That was the perfect place to start. I knew it would be extravagant before I even got the invitation. She'd always dreamed big. Our parents enabled her delusions of grandeur, but truthfully, she was good at spinning perception. Everything had to be a moment with her, a spectacle. From the captioned SUV post to her pastel-themed birthday brunches, Mia had turned her entire life into a curated Instagram feed. And now she was engaged to a guy named Derek, who worked as a creative strategist for a brand I couldn't even find on Google. I did some digging and figured out what that meant. Freelance, mostly unemployed, and couch surfing before he met Mia. I didn't say anything at first. It wasn't my business. Until I got a call from my cousin Rachel. Rachel had always been one of the few family members who actually saw me. We weren't super close growing up, but she was the type who asked how I was really doing and actually listened. She'd skipped the anniversary dinner due to work travel, and she hadn't been at any of the follow-up events since. But she called out of the blue one Thursday afternoon. "I heard about what happened," she said. "At the dinner. The seat thing." I laughed bitterly. Word gets around. It was cruel, Connor. And honestly, not surprising. I've watched how they treat you. I'm just sorry it's taken this long for everyone else to notice. We talked for nearly an hour. I told her about the envelope, about the SUV, about the vacation fund. And that's when she dropped something I hadn't heard before. "You know Derek asked your dad for money, right?" I blinked. "What?" "Yeah. Apparently he's been floating this startup idea, some kind of influencer brand studio, or whatever. And he asked Uncle Mark for a small investment. I only heard because Mom overheard your mom ranting about how Connor probably wouldn't mind covering it if he was asked nicely." I sat back in my chair, stunned. They really said that? Yup. They assumed you'd come around, that you'd feel guilty and swoop in eventually like you always do. That was the moment it all clicked. The party wasn't just a celebration. It was a setup for me. Another chance to reel me in, get me on the hook, and have me finance someone else's fantasy while they smiled through it like it was normal. I wasn't going to let that happen. But I wasn't just going to ignore the invite, either. No, that would be too easy, too invisible. Instead, I was going to show up. Not physically, not in a suit, but in a way they'd never forget. It started with a guest list. I asked Rachel if she had access to it, and she did. Mia had proudly shared it with a few family members to show off how exclusive the event would be. I got a copy within the hour. 82 names. I started scanning through them. Family, friends, extended relatives, some of Derek's people. Then I noticed one entry that made me pause. Mr. and Mrs. Hastings. That name sounded familiar. I dug back through my mental archives. And then I remembered, back in college, I'd interned at a boutique wealth management firm. One of our clients had been a quiet but powerful investor named Peter Hastings. Owned shares in a dozen tech companies and had a reputation for backing passion projects, if he liked the people behind them. Apparently, Derek had been pitching to him too. Now that was interesting. I reached out to an old colleague from that internship. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I shot my shot. "Hey," I texted. Random question. "Is Peter Hastings still working with Elite Private Investments?" The reply came within minutes. "He is. In fact, he's coming to speak at our alumni mixer next month." "What?" "Just wanted to be sure," I replied. I made a note. Then I turned my attention to Derek. I pulled every string I had, looked up his social handles, ran background checks, found old business filings. Turns out, Derek had launched 2 separate LLCs in the last 3 years. Both were now defunct. One of them had a small trail of complaints on a freelancer forum, unpaid graphic designers, missed invoices, broken promises. Nothing illegal, but sketchy enough. I archived everything. Meanwhile, I scheduled a sit-down with my CPA and a lawyer I'd recently connected with through a local startup networking event. We drew up clean, bulletproof documentation of my disassociation from all family-related funds. I didn't want there to be any room for claims, assumptions, or false expectations. Then I opened a new email account. Anonymous, clean, untraceable. I used it to send an invitation of my own. It went to Mr. and Mrs. Hastings. Just a single paragraph. No threats. No accusations. Before committing to any financial support at Mia and Derek's engagement celebration, you may wish to request a background overview of Derek's previous business ventures. A neutral third party has compiled verifiable documents available upon request. Attached was a secure link. Password protected. I don't know whether they opened it. I never got confirmation, but I know I gave them the option. That was all I needed. But I wasn't done. 2 weeks before the party, I made a quiet visit to the venue. I wasn't on the official planning committee, but a friend of mine worked for the same event space. I asked for a favor, just to look at the layout, a sense of where people would be, who would be speaking, timing, order of toasts. And that's when I learned something deliciously perfect. There would be a projector screen during dinner. Apparently, Mia wanted to play a slideshow, A montage of her and Derek's journey. Childhood pics, proposal footage, goofy TikToks. It was her signature style. Dramatic, grand, narcissistic. I made a note of the file format. And then I made my own version. It looked identical at first. Same opening title card. Same first few photos. A perfect mimic of her tone and style. But at the halfway mark, the images began to shift. Clips of Derek's defunct LLC pages. Screenshots of complaints. Snippets of financial statements that didn't quite line up. Silent, clinical, undeniable. And then one last image, a photo from the anniversary dinner. The long table. Everyone smiling. Me standing behind them. With no chair. That was the last frame. I saved the file. Password locked it. Stored it on a USB, disguised in a case that said Final Slideshow, Event Night. I didn't plan to use it. Not unless I had to. Because this wasn't about sabotage. It was about possibility. About creating a moment where I had control. Where the power dynamic could shift, even just for a breath. And if I didn't have to use it, then I'd still walk away knowing I could have. And that, for once, would be enough. The final piece of the setup came 3 nights before the party. I got a text from Mom. Mom, we'd love to see you at Mia's celebration. We've saved you a seat, smiley face. I stared at the message, then replied, Me. Thanks. I'll be there. The evening of Mia's engagement party arrived with crystal clear skies and a breeze just cool enough to remind you fall was coming. The venue, a sprawling vineyard-style event space about an hour outside the city, was dressed like a Pinterest board brought to life. String lights zigzagged across the courtyard. Lanterns lined the path to the reception area. There was a flower wall with a gold neon sign that read, Derek and Mia Forever, and a champagne cart manned by a server in white gloves. They'd spared no expense. Except, of course, when it came to me. I didn't get a personalized welcome bag like the other family members. My name card at the reception table was missing. The staff scrambled and wrote one by hand when I showed up. I gave them a polite smile. I wasn't offended. In fact, it was perfect. I had dressed for the occasion, not to stand out, but to blend in. Navy suit, no tie, hair neatly done, nothing flashy. I shook hands. I smiled. I accepted hugs from extended relatives I hadn't seen in years. People kept saying things like, so glad you could make it, and you look so grown up now. Most of them hadn't spoken to me since 2019. The dinner portion of the evening was set up in a glass-walled ballroom that overlooked the vineyard. Long tables, candlelit centerpieces, one of those hired string quartets that plays Taylor Swift like it's Mozart. I was seated on the far left, third table from the front, next to some distant cousin and her sleepy husband. From where I sat, I had a clear view of the head table, where Mia and Derek were laughing like royalty. My parents sat beside them, glowing with pride. The same people who once gave away my seat like it was nothing. Still, I smiled, ate my risotto, made small talk. Because tonight wasn't about bitterness. It was about clarity. Dinner rolled on. Wine poured freely. Toast started. Zach gave a bland, overly long speech about family legacy and supporting dreams. Mia's best friend cried during hers and called them soulmates, like literally. Then came the final toast. My mom stood up. She was radiant in a silver gown, her hair in an elegant twist, the image of maternal grace. She raised her glass, and her voice carried through the room with rehearsed confidence. I just want to say how proud we are. Watching Mia grow into the woman she is, and now finding a partner like Derek. Well, it's every parent's dream. We've seen their dedication, their passion, their future, and we believe in it wholeheartedly. She paused for effect. That's why, as part of our gift, we're helping them take the next step. Derek's startup will be launching this fall with full family support. Applause. The clinking of glasses. Mia beamed. Derek nodded solemnly like he'd just accepted a Nobel Prize. I didn't clap, not because I was bitter, but because I knew what was coming next. Before dessert, Mia said, grabbing the mic, we have one more thing. A little look at our story. The lights dimmed. The string quartet quieted. The projector screen lowered from the ceiling like a stage curtain. Mia handed the DJ a sleek black USB stick. Except it wasn't her stick. It was mine. I'd watched the swap happen 15 minutes earlier. The real slideshow was left in the DJ booth, and mine, nearly identical in every way, was slipped into his hand when he asked which one to use. He didn't even question it. Play the one labeled Final Slideshow, Event Night, I'd said. He nodded, distracted. Got it. And now, the screen flickered to life. The first few slides were sweet. Baby photos of Mia, childhood pictures, a shot of Derek on one knee at the beach, their theme song playing softly behind it. People smiled, laughed, toasted. Then the shift. The next slide was an image of Derek's first defunct LLC, logo and all. Confusion rippled through the room. Next came a screenshot from a freelance dispute board. Someone named Carla claiming she was owed $4,000 for 6 months of work. Then another. Then another. The music cut. Now silence filled the air. The screen flashed to a tax filing. 0 reported income for 2 consecutive years. Then a still of Derek, taken from a public Instagram story from 2 years ago, sitting in a hot tub with the caption, "Living the investor-funded life, baby." Gasps. Murmurs. The projector paused on one last image, a photograph of the anniversary dinner. The one Rachel had taken, unknowingly, from across the room. 10 chairs. One person standing. Me. Standing behind them all, smiling politely, forgotten. I watched as my mother's face went pale. As Derek leaned forward, whispering something frantically to Mia. As the DJ turned to the booth, utterly lost. He hadn't touched a thing. The room was frozen. And I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I tried. I said quietly but firmly. I tried to be part of this family. I showed up. I gave. I forgave. But some people only see you when they need something. No one spoke. I turned to my parents. I brought an envelope to your anniversary dinner. It had $2,000 in it. You gave my seat away to a stranger. Aunt Julie gasped softly. Rachel looked stunned, but not surprised. I continued. You said I was dramatic, sensitive, that I made it about me. But tonight? Tonight's about clarity. I looked directly at Derek. I did some homework. Nothing personal, just facts. And if Mr. Hastings was still here, I hope he got a chance to look at them too. Derek's face had gone completely blank. Mia was seething, hissing something at him under her breath. She grabbed her purse, yanked it open, and frantically pulled out her phone. I finished my glass of wine. I'm not asking for a seat anymore, I said. I brought my own table, and I walked out. Behind me, the room exploded, first in whispers, then in voices raised in panic. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I'd said what needed saying. I'd shown them who I was, not a doormat, not a bank account, not a placeholder. I was done. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from Mom, from Zach, even a voicemail from Derek, trying to clear up some confusion. I blocked them all. Mia didn't call. Instead, she posted a statement on Instagram later that week. Sometimes people project their insecurities. We rise above. Love wins. The comments were limited. The likes were fewer than usual. 3 weeks later, I heard from Rachel that the Hastings quietly pulled out of negotiations. That Derek's startup lost its other 2 backers. That the engagement party had gone $8,000 over budget, and Mom and Dad were scrambling to cover it. The SUV? Returned. Lease terminated. As for me, I was fine. More than fine. I started spending more weekends at community events, eventually launching a local nonprofit that offers financial literacy programs for teens aging out of foster care. We called it First Seat because everyone deserves one. At our first fundraiser, someone asked if my family would be attending. I smiled. No, I said. I finally made room for people who see me. And that was the end of it. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply being seen.